Several minutes of commercial-free football starts now. Here are the Purple Mortgage Guys.
Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of Purple Mortgage Guys. Coming to you post-draft, a few days in the books here. Had some time to digest how the Vikings fared and what you think of the overall draft class for 2023. We've got Tanner Weber here tonight. We got Goose, myself. We're three guys in the home loan business and like talking Vikings football, so we started a show. So if you've not yet subscribed, go ahead and hit us up. If you've got any comments for the show, put them in the comments here. We'd love to read them on the next episode. And we'll jump right into it, guys. I want a quick summary here. Overall thoughts, now that you've had a few days to look at the draft class, maybe hit up some YouTube videos and read some articles. Tanner, overall thoughts. Good, bad, otherwise to be determined. How optimistic is Tanner on a scale of maybe 1 to 10? 10 being super optimistic.
I thought you were going to throw me a grading scale like A, B, C, D, but
no, we're bypassing grades.
Scale of 1 to 10, I would say probably an 8.
An 8, okay.
A little above average. I would say like a 7 is probably pretty average. I would say just above that. So I feel like there were a couple questionable picks, a couple guys that we reached on in the draft. With Mekhi Blackman and Jay Ward. And I know some people will probably be like, well, I mean, he had a solid PFF grade. He was one of the top man corners in college football last year. But I guess it's maybe more so because I didn't do any homework on those two guys. The two guys I felt like we reached on are the two I never did any research on. So I feel good about it, though. Jordan Addison, obviously, as people know, if anybody's been watching this pretty religiously, has been my favorite receiver in the draft since December, January. And I also really liked Jaquan Roy pick as well. He's kind of a one-hit wonder at LSU, but I think he fills a bigger need than people realize. Our run defense wasn't great last year, and I think that, he provides a lot of strength in the middle, and I think he'll be a solid Dalvin Tomlinson replacement in the next year or two once he gets some reps under his belt.
Goose, overall thoughts? Optimistic? Indifferent, to be determined? Scale of 1 to 10, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm in the same area as Tanner. My 1 to 10 scale I would call 5 average. So I'm going to say probably a little closer to 6 or 7. Time will tell. I think it's hard. I think anyone who says when Mekhi Blackman was picked that the gut reaction wasn't like, who the heck did we just pick? Because he wasn't on anyone's board. The weird thing about that pick is he wasn't on anyone's board. He wasn't mocked to go anywhere. He was on one ranking system. He was like the 200th prospect. But then everyone who talked about him was like, oh, I didn't see him going here, but you're going to love this guy. Like look at his
Why is
PFF
that? Why
grade.
was he not ranked higher on boards?
It is the greatest mystery that I've ever seen, because no one has really come out and said, maybe an analyst or two has been like, that was a reach. But most people have come out and been like, he's sticky. He's a veteran. He's played a bunch of seasons. I trust Flores on this. I think that he picked him because he knows what he wants. He knows the type of corner he is. The one main thing that I look at that's tough is, okay, maybe Keeley wasn't fluid and that doesn't really match what you want to do. Because if you've got stiff hips, it's tough to play man coverage, and that's known to be what Flores wants to do. But for Keeley to be 20 and Mekhi Blackman to be 24, I mean, that's 4 years of development that you have to get to the same starting spot. So that was the biggest pill for me to swallow, but I still like the idea that the little tape that I've seen on him is he seems like he stays in the wide receiver's pocket and is really competitive and can play man-to-man D.
I think it's a combination. You already hit on the age, because by the time he's done with his rookie deal, he's going to be almost 30. But the other thing is, what is the prototypical cornerback in the NFL right now? It's your guy that's 6'1", 200 pounds and can run. and he's not that big.
Mm-hmm.
That's what everyone wants, but I don't think there's a lot of that.
He's a scrawny build. I feel like every team has at least just like one go-to big corner. Like that's just a desired trait. Like all the top guys that went in the draft this year, none of them were under 6 foot.
So do you think? I think my initial thought was they could have gotten him in. They could have taken Ringo and then had Blackman with their next pick. But I think he fits Flores' scheme really well for what he wants to do. He fell in love with them. They didn't want to risk on missing. I think they said they would have picked him at 87 had they made the pick there, right? So obviously they love the guy. It's hard for someone like the three of us who do home loans for a living to question Brian Flores. But I think that's probably the only knock on the first several picks would be maybe a bit of a reach there. But like you said, Goose, everybody loves him, and he ranked really high on all the statistical stuff from the season. So
one thing that it kind of reminds me of is when we picked Daniil in I think the 3rd round, there's a lot of people who was like, this guy's raw. He's young. He doesn't have any production. Like everyone said it was reach. And then Zimmer Spielman came out and was like, the second we picked Daniil, 4 or 5 teams were like, dude, like we were taking him with our next selection. So we base if a player was a reach off of Mel Kiper's draft board.
Mm-hmm.
Like you never know how many other teams are out there that are like, we were taking Mekhi Blackman with the next pick. So I think you identify your guys, you go get them. If you can get the right value, that's ideal, but you have no idea when another team's going to select him. And if he was at that point of the draft, I think we were all shocked at the cornerback talent available. But you're probably getting to the point where it's like, okay, this guy's more of a zone cover guy. This guy's more man. There's probably only 1 or 2 players that you like for your scheme. And once you get down to 1 or 2, you got to take him. You can't take the risk that someone snatches him ahead of you.
What do you think on the first round selection on Addison? Tanner, was that their guy the whole time, or was it a case of this is the last receiver in that first group and we better take him now and not trade back? They just bit the bullet there. What do you think happened?
Yeah, that's so tough to say because the team's going to come out and say that Addison
can't believe he fell. We were going to take him the whole time.
That you were there, but we had there were 4 receivers selected in a row there, so it's really hard to say whether or not that was their guy the entire time. I do think that he probably fits like what they want to do or what the type of guy that they want at wide receiver. I actually, if I had to like put my money on it, I would probably say Jackson Smith and Jigba was probably their number 1 guy, but I could honestly see Addison being the number 2 guy just because he's probably arguably the best route runner in the class, and I think that's super important for what they want to do at wide receiver.
Sure.
Do you know of those top 4 guys, Tanner? Was there anyone else that had a visit, a top 30?
Not that I recall. I think they did a lot of homework on Zay Flowers before the combine, and Kevin O'Connell probably didn't think that they needed to meet with him just because he was such good friends with Boston College's head coach. Yeah. But as far as I know, they didn't meet with anybody else.
Tanner, what do you know about Jay Ward? What do we expect there? Safety, slot corner? What do you?
Yeah, that's the other guy I didn't do any research on. I honestly don't really know anything about him. The one thing I did read that kind of excited me, I guess, from his notes, it had nothing really to do about his play style or anything like that, but they said that he was like the alpha on that LSU defense. Like he called all the shots, and he was the guy that they turned to when they needed a call played or a play called. Sorry. In a tough situation. So that's something our defense, I feel like, has kind of been missing, and I still don't know where that's going to come from next year. I feel like that's it makes me a little nervous to know that we don't have that Everson Griffin presence anymore, somebody that just kind of has a mouth that's willing to run and, get after teammates and hype everybody up. So it sounds like Jay Ward is that type of guy, but we will see how long it takes. That kind of felt like a Chris Boyd replacement pick to me, to be honest with you.
Gotcha.
Hopefully it's a little bit better than that.
Maybe
he does have the versatility to play corner and safety, and I honestly have no idea where he's going to be because I've seen like the Vikings like platforms like Instagram, Twitter. they've had some stuff where they like announce him as a safety, but he was announced in the draft where the team turns the card in as a corner.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he's probably going to be a nickel corner most likely, but I just don't know what his actual position is going to be. So
it's good to have versatility there with our injury history, with our corners, with Harrison aging out, with Scene unknown. I like a player that can maybe slot in at nickel or play safety, kind of wherever you need him. It does sound like his floor is being a really good special teams player, and it sounds like the case with him. I mean, I think everything projected him to go about right where we picked him, but some teams love a really versatile player, and then some teams are like, I don't know if we play him at corner. I don't know if we play him at safety. I don't know I don't know where he fits. I think Kwesi was the one who had said post draft that some of their guys internal on their scouting team were like, we think he could make it as a starter as a corner, and we think he could start in the slot, and we think he could start at safety. And with Kwesi's value background and stock exchange, he was like, you're telling me this guy could potentially cut it at any of those three positions? Like, I'm taking him.
Speaking of Kwesi and going in on some penny stocks, I think is what you're saying there, Goose. I love taking a quarterback every year and just seeing if you hit. You might not. It might be a bust. You might have the next Kellen Mond on your hands, but you might have the next, I don't know, late round Tom Brady's the obvious one, but you might have the next stud quarterback in the draft class. I think I know Goose's thoughts. I'm going to start with Tanner on this one. Jaren Hall, is he going to see any playing time in the next 2 to 3 years for the Vikings, or is this strictly backup quarterback at best? And don't get your hopes up.
I think he will see the field in the next 2 to 3 years.
Do you really?
But it really depends on where they're selecting in next year's class, because next year's QB class is better than this one, and this was a good class.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on where they're selecting next year. Like if they're in a spot where they can take a really good QB very high next year, I think they'll pull the trigger and do that, and that's going to be the starter long term. But if they don't, I think there's a really good chance that Jaren Hall could potentially be a starter here within 2 to 3 years. The one thing that I really like about Jaren Hall is he doesn't have all of like the characteristics that you look for in like a stellar quarterback, like a cannon of an arm, like big stature, 6'4", 230 pounds, can run. But he has that, I don't even know like what to label it, but like the it factor, like the poised demeanor, like he doesn't get rattled easily, like he can take shots, stand in the pocket, deliver the ball. And I just feel like there's maybe like 10 QBs in the league right now that like do that well. And I feel like that's a very desired characteristic that Kevin O'Connell probably looks for in a QB. He is accurate. He doesn't have a cannon of an arm. He does throw a pretty good deep ball, but he's not a guy that's going to throw it like 60 yards downfield.
Right.
He can move around in the pocket. He can extend plays with his legs, but don't look for him to be a dude that's going to outrun somebody like a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen. My comp for him is actually Russell Wilson. That probably sounds crazy to some people because Russell Wilson is, an ex-MVP. But they're very similar in stature, same height, same weight.
They play a lot alike. Just watching highlights,
yeah. I wouldn't say Russell Wilson has a cannon of an arm, but he probably throws like the prettiest deep ball in the league. Like he has very good velocity and touch on his throws. And one characteristic that Russ has is that calm demeanor. Like he plays his best, I think, when teams need him to. Obviously, he didn't do that last year, but I feel like throughout his career, he has shown that. So I'm really excited to see where Jaren Hall is in 2 years. I don't think that this is going to be a Kellen Mond type pick. I do think he'll see the field at some point because he does have traits that translate to the pros. Whereas I think there were some concerns about Kellen Mond when we drafted him. So,
you know what'll be fun is those August preseason games. Now there'll be something to watch.
I am a little like Nick Mullins is a really good backup player.
I know he is.
So I don't know if they were like, oh, he's here, like we can't not take him at this point. But if you I just can't really imagine a scenario where Jaron Hall like beats out Nick Mullins to be a backup QB that soon. And if he does, like if he beats out Nick Mullins in training camp to be Kirk's backup, that's very, very promising.
Mm-hmm.
I think for us as Vikings fans, because Nick Mullins is a really good quarterback. Like he's probably he could be like, I wouldn't say he'd be a great starter in this league, but I think he could start for like 3 or 4 teams.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh yeah. I think the Vikings have to strongly consider keeping 3 quarterbacks on the roster this year with Nick Mullins' immediate value and Jaron Hall's potential. I also think after seeing the 49ers melt down in the playoffs without a quarterback, I think teams are going to look at that a little different about having more than one guy sitting behind. I think the one thing that kind of excites me about Jaron Hall is I think your best bet at finding a diamond in the rough late in the draft is a guy who's not 6'5" with a cannon. Like those guys go early, and sometimes they pan out and sometimes they don't because of their makeup, and a team just falls in love with the traits and they say we should be able to make this work. And then you don't really value that 6-foot quarterback who has a great touch pass, but his arm isn't super strong. I think he's that perfect quarterback that is just good at everything, and he doesn't blow you away with any one thing. That would be his, like, you look back at this draft 3 or 4 years from now and go, like, how did no one take him? And it's because he doesn't have like an elite trait, but he looks calm in the pocket. I love that he had a baseball career, and there's a lot that you can apply there with quick hands and kind of moving around. But yeah, when I watch tape, that's the first thing I thought of as well, is he looks a lot like Russell Wilson. His deep passes have a lot of hang time on them, so it's going to be tough for cornerbacks to bat it down because they're coming straight down out of the sky. And I'm excited. I'm curious if KOC, I mean, after a 13-4 season, I'd imagine he wouldn't change much, but last year, none of our starters really played in the preseason. So like you said, Brent, I think we're going to get a heavy dose of seeing what he's got.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys think? Does this change their plan at QB? Do you think this was the plan all along? Do you think they would have drafted, I don't know, any one of those QBs had they fallen, another half round, or do you think somebody like Jaron was the plan all along, or do you think it's just evolving as they go here?
I don't know if Jaron Hall was the plan all along, just because I feel like any QB that you really want in the draft, I feel like teams usually move up to get him, and we didn't do that for him specifically. I think they probably just thought that there was a lot of value there for how far he fell, and I just think it was too good of an opportunity, I think, to pass up. But I do believe that they probably really liked Hendon Hooker a lot too. And sure. I am in the same mentality as you, Brent, same mind space of like selecting a QB every year because you're bound to hit on one at some point. So
right.
We're in a scenario where I think we need to be able to do that at this point with 35-year-old Kirk Cousins.
I think the year we took Bullett's Boehringer and then he never saw the field, it's like, okay, if we're going to take a tight end from Germany, we might as well try a QB. So
yeah, I think the Vikings are in a perfect situation. You picked a guy late enough to where if he doesn't pan out and you want to draft another one next year, like you can. And if Kirk blows it up, which I think there's a legitimate chance that Kirk has the best year of his career coming up with the second year in KOC's system, the wide receiving core now. We've got a running back room full of like pretty good talent, depending on what ends up, opening day. I think Kirk could have the best season of his career. And if that happens, you can look at re-signing him. You maybe feel like you don't have as many holes, and so you could package up a bunch of picks and try to go up and get one of the top 1, 2, 3 guys at quarterback next year. Or maybe Jaron Hall is the guy and you can move forward with him. I think they're in a really good spot to be flexible.
Gives options, right? The other thing I love is taking a running back later because they're not as valuable as we might have thought here a few years back. So Dwayne McBride, 7th rounder, picked 222 overall. Goose, initial thoughts on McBride? Does he sprinkle into the mix this year, or is that a wait a year type of a guy and see what he has?
I think he's absolutely going to get touches this year. It's seeming less and less likely that Dalvin Cook is going to be on the roster week 1, and he just seems. I mean, Madison's been exciting. He just kind of lacks a little bit of that explosiveness that you want out of your every down. The other running backs never see the field. I think he's absolutely going to get his opportunity to play, and I think he's going to play well. I mean, Mo Ibrahim didn't get drafted, and he had one of the most prolific college careers ever. And I get why they wouldn't. No one would take him because he's old. He was like a 6-year gopher, and he's got, I mean, probably just about more carries than anyone ever. But I think he's still going to have 2 or 3 years of really good production, and the Lions signed him out of free agency. So I just think there's so many running backs that can contribute. I don't know that he'll have like a breakout role, but I think he'll definitely have some type of role carved out for him in the offense right away.
Tanner, your thoughts? Running back, you like the pick?
Yeah, I mean, in a 7th round flyer, like you're going to find a lot of value at that position. I think as running backs always fall. I just don't know. Like, I'm kind of surprised that a lot of people they seem like they're so certain that Dalvin's not going to be here, and I'm okay like if he's not, because I would rather have that money I think to spend somewhere else to maybe bring in like another veteran corner. So if Dalvin is here, I kind of feel like that last running back roster spot, because I can't imagine they carry more than 4. Like I would think that camp battle would go down between McBride and probably Kene Nwangwu maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you could probably find some kick return replacement as good as he's been. But if Dalvin's not here, I do think that all 4 of those guys are on the roster. And I just think that there's going to be a lot of split touches between Madison, McBride, and Chandler. Goose has kind of hit on most of McBride for the most part already. He was super productive in college. We have not seen him be utilized as a receiver at all. He wasn't asked to catch the ball, so I don't know if that's something he can do or not. He was the number 3 overall graded running back in college football last year. So played super well. Number 5 graded runner overall. Extremely productive. Had 120 plus yards in 10 out of 11 games last year. Has good vision. I think the one big knock with him, though, and I know we talked about this the other night or last night, was he had 10 career fumbles in college. And 9 of those came within the last 2 years.
It's been about 10 years or so since we've had a fumbling problem at running back. So
that's the biggest thing. Like he can run the ball, but ball security issues, and like there is absolutely no proof that he can catch the ball. So those are the 2 biggest things. So we'll find out in camp whether or not he can do both of those things.
You know what, though? Again, just like quarterback, now they've got options and there's different things that could hit. And I like the way that stacks up. One last thing here to close it out, guys. The undrafted free agent signings this year. A couple of names that caught my eye. Tanner, you probably know all 15 of them, but Andre Carter, linebacker, and then Ivan Pace Jr., linebacker. I think I saw one of those guys sign the richest contract for an undrafted free agent, either team history or in NFL history. I don't know what it was. I saw that today, and I forget the article, but kind of exciting what they snagged there after the draft. What do you guys think there, Tanner?
Yeah, this is probably a whole separate topic or a whole other video, but I'm actually more excited about our undrafted free agent class than I am our actual draft class. ESPN has like a top 25 that they release every single year of like undrafted players, and then they have their list, a whole big board. And Ivan Pace and Andre Carter, I think, both of them were in their top 5. And we got both of them here.
That's awesome.
Some quick behind the scenes. When we were waiting for the 87th pick. I was pounding the table for Keeley. I think we maybe traded back. We were talking a little bit more about it, and Tanner had sent a text that I think said Keeley, another player, and then he said dark horse Carter. And we were looking at like last pick of the third round. And that's kind of where a lot of teams had him slotted. And so to think about drafting him in the third, fourth range and to get him as an undrafted free agent is just crazy.
Well, and it felt like hit all the needs except for maybe linebacker, right, in the draft, and then to come out with that I don't know, it gives a lot of reason to be optimistic about this year's draft and undrafted free agents. So
Andre Carter has a ton of potential. People, like fans specifically, just need to understand that you cannot expect him to come in and contribute this first year because he's a toothpick. So my count for him was actually Gregory Rosso, like just a tall dude that's super thin. But like he's had a lot of production, and like if he can put on some muscle, like I feel like that could potentially be like a Daniil Hunter type.
Gosh, in the photos I've seen, I don't think I'd call him a toothpick.
Well, he's like 6'7".
Yeah.
Like he looks to me like he's more built like a basketball player than a football player. Like I don't
6'7", 260. Give the guy a break, Tanner.
All right, so I gave him an 8 for the draft for optimism. Goose, what was your number?
I was between a 6 and a 7, so I'll go 6.5.
Goose is a 6.5. Sounds like a Tanner Weber answer right there. Tanner, what were you?
I said 8, but like my scale was probably equivalent to Goose's. Like I said, just above average.
Okay. So we got him somewhere between a 6.5 and an 8. If you're still watching, give us your number, your optimism number, 1 to 10, 10 being super optimistic, 1 being like some of these Twitter and Facebook groups where we've got a lot of GMs, I guess, that are Viking fans. I did not realize. I'm reminded of that every year, but didn't realize that. So throw us some comments, subscribe if you've not yet done so, and we'll be back again here shortly with some more Vikings talk and home loan talk. So have a great day, everybody.